Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was adopted by son of Principal Nezu. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world did not end with a bang, nor a whimper. For Izuku Midoriya, the world ended with the smell of ozone and the screeching of twisting metal. It was a Tuesday. Tuesdays were supposed to be for Katsudan and late-night hero news. They were not supposed to be for the structural collapse of the downtown shopping district. Izuku, 10 years old and small for his age, sat on the back of an ambulance bumper, a shock blanket wrapped so tightly around his shoulders that it felt like a vice. His red sneakers dangled inches above the asphalt, swinging rhythmically. Left. Right. Left. Right. It was the only thing he could control. Around him, the chaos of Heroes Society was in full swing. Police sirens wailed, creating a dissonant harmony with the sobbing of civilians. Dust, thick and tasting of pulverized concrete, hung in the air, catching the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles in a macabre disco. Hey kid! Izuku didn't look up. He was staring at a piece of debris near his shoe. It was a fragment of a sign. Part of the letter M. Kid, can you hear me? A hand, heavy and callous, landed on his shoulder. Izuku flinched, his head snapping up. A police officer stood there. He looked tired. His uniform was stained with dust, and his quirk, something that made his skin look like sandpaper, made his expression hard to read. Where is she? Izuku asked. His voice didn't sound like his own. It was scratchy, dry. The officer sighed, glancing over his shoulder toward the smoking ruin where the villain Gigantification had battled the hero Death Arms. It had been a flashy fight. The kind the news helicopters loved. Big punches. Big shouts. Big damage. We're still looking, the officer said, but he looked away. People always looked away when they were lying. Izuku had learned that from watching his classmates when they said they hadn't hidden his shoes. She didn't make it out, Izuku said. It wasn't a question. We don't know that. The villain threw a bus, Izuku mumbled. His eyes glazed over, the green irises vibrating slightly as his mind replayed the last 10 minutes on a loop. Trajectory of the vehicle suggests an impact velocity of approximately 80 km per hour. The structural integrity of the cafe awning was compromised by the initial shockwave. Mom was under the awning. The bus hit the support pillar. The collapse was instantaneous. Human reaction time is 0.25 seconds. She didn't have time to run. The officer stared at him, disturbed. Kid, she didn't feel it, right? Izuku looked up, his eyes wide and terrifyingly hollow. If the collapse was instantaneous, the neural pathways wouldn't have had time to transmit pain signals before cessation of brain activity. The officer took a step back, his hand retreating from Izuku's shoulder as if burned. I need to get a medic over here. You're in shock. Izuku returned to staring at his shoes. Left. Right. Left. Right. He wasn't in shock. He was analyzing. It was all he had. If he stopped analyzing, if he stopped processing the variables, the reality would crash down on him with the weight of that bus. Inko Midoriya was dead. Collateral damage. A statistic in tomorrow's paper, buried under the headline of Death Arms Victory. And Izuku was alone. The transition from the warmth of a loving home to the cold indifference of the foster system took exactly 48 hours. Because Inko had no living relatives, and Hisashi Midoriya had vanished into the ether of overseas work years ago, unreachable and uncontactable, Izuku became a ward of the state. The system was overwhelmed. The surge in villainy since the dawn of quirks had left thousands of orphans in its wake. There were good homes, certainly. There were kind families looking to heal a broken child. But Izuku Midoriya was quirkless. In the file on the social worker's desk, the word was stamped in red ink. Quirkless. It was a warning label. It meant fragile. It meant useless. It meant liability. He was placed in the Sunrise Home for Boys, a name so ironically cheerful it felt like a punchline. It was a gray, brutalist building on the edge of the industrial district, smelling perpetually of bleach and boiled cabbage. The caretaker was a woman named Ms. Goro. Her quirk allowed her to elongate her fingers into whip-like tendrils. She used them mostly to point accusingly or snatch toys away. Midoriya, she had said on his first day, looking down her nose at him. We run a tight ship. No roughhousing. No crying after lights out. And absolutely no quirk usage indoors. Though, she smirked, a cruel twisting of lips. I suppose that last rule won't be a problem for you. The other boys laughed. Children are perceptive creatures. They know exactly where the bottom of the totem pole is, and they are relieved when someone else is standing there. For 2 months, Izuku existed. He didn't live. He existed. He learned the patterns of the house. Breakfast is at 7 o'clock. The boys with physical mutation quirks eat first because they are stronger. Avoid Takeda. His acid spit activates when he laughs. The floorboard on the 3rd stair squeaks. Step over it to avoid waking Ms. Goro. He became a ghost. He kept his head down, his shoulders hunched. He stopped speaking entirely, his voice dying in his throat because every time he spoke, someone reminded him that he was nothing. But he couldn't stop his mind. At night, under the thin, scratchy blanket of his cot, Izuku wrote. He had managed to salvage one notebook from the ruins of his backpack, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 11. It was charred at the edges and smelled of smoke, but the pages were intact. He analyzed the other boys. He analyzed Ms. Goro. He analyzed the heroes on the news that played in the common room. He dissected their movements, their weaknesses, their psychological triggers. It was his way of regaining control. If he could understand them, they couldn't hurt him. Then came the incident with the spider. One of the older boys, a brute named Kaido with 4 arms, had cornered a stray cat in the courtyard. Kaido was bored. Boredom in a quirk-heavy foster home usually resulted in cruelty. Izuku hadn't meant to intervene. He knew the variables. Kaido, mass 60 kilograms. Strength enhancer. Temperament, volatile. But when Kaido raised a fist to crush the hissing animal, Izuku moved. His left lower arm has a limited range of motion. Izuku blurted out, stepping into the sunlight. Kaido froze, blinking. Ha! You favored it during kickball, Izuku said, his voice trembling but his words rapid fire. You have a hairline fracture or a muscle tear in the deltoid. If you swing with that side, your balance will shift to the right. The cat can escape through the gap in your stance. Kaido stared at him. The other boys gathered around, sensing blood. You spying on me, Deku? Kaido growled, dropping the cat. The animal scrambled away, smart enough to flee. I just observed. He's always writing in that creepy book, another boy sneered. Muttering to himself like a villain, Ms. Goro appeared at the door, her fingers elongating to wrap around the doorframe. What is the noise? Midoriya is being creepy again, Ms. Goro! Kaido shouted, putting on an innocent face. He's writing bad things about us in his book. He's stalking us. Ms. Goro's eyes narrowed. She crossed the courtyard in 3 long strides. Before Izuku could clutch the notebook to his chest, her elongated fingers snatched it from his hands. No! Izuku gasped, reaching out. Please, that's mine. It's all I have. Ms. Goro flipped through the pages. Her eyes scanned the dense, scrawled handwriting. Goro, tendinitis and index finger. Vulnerable to cold temperatures. Reaction time slows after 8 p.m. She went pale. Then red. Disgusting, she hissed. Analyzing us? Looking for weaknesses? Is this what you do? You think because you're a defect you can prey on your betters? No, we don't allow predator behavior here. She walked to the industrial trash incinerator at the edge of the yard. It was burning low, digesting the morning's garbage. Wait! Please! Izuku screamed, scrambling forward. Kaido shoved him back, laughing. Ms. Goro tossed the notebook into the fire. Izuku watched. He watched the cover curl. He watched the charred edges catch the flame. He watched the analysis of All Might, the memories of his mother buying him the book, the only thing that proved he had a mind worth something. He watched it all turn to ash. Something inside Izuku snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet sound of a tether being cut. That night the house slept. Izuku did not. He packed nothing. He had nothing. He wore his red shoes, a dark hoodie he had found in the Lost and Found, and a pair of cargo pants that were slightly too big. He navigated the hallway. Step over the third stair. He reached the back door. The lock is a simple pin tumbler. A paperclip works if you apply torque at a 45-degree angle. He had read about it in a mystery novel. It took him 3 minutes of fumbling, sweating, terrified silence. The lock clicked. The night air of Nezu hit him. It was cold, polluted, and smelled of freedom. Izuku Midoriya stepped out into the dark. He didn't look back at the sunrise home. He started walking, his mind already calculating the variables of survival. Variable 1, shelter. Variable 2, food. Variable 3, avoid detection. He disappeared into the city. 2 weeks. Izuku had survived on the streets of the darker districts of Muzurufu for 2 weeks. He had learned quickly that the city during the day and the city at night were two different organisms. During the day, Muzurufu was a bustling metropolis of heroes and commerce. At night, in the back alleys of the entertainment district and the rundown industrial zones, it was a jungle. Izuku was small. He was quiet. He was observant. He slept in ventilation shafts of warm bakeries. He ate discarded food from convenience stores, analyzing expiration dates and bacterial growth probability before taking a bite. He learned to read the flow of the underworld. Men in black suits with red ties, yakuza. Avoid eye contact. Walk with purpose. Teenagers with spray cans, harmless, but loud. Avoid because they attract police. Heroes on patrol, stick to the rooftops or the sewers. They look for villains, but they also look for runaways. He was currently huddled behind a massive dumpster in an alleyway in the Narahata district. It was raining, a miserable, freezing drizzle that soaked through his hoodie. His stomach gave a painful lurch. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. Caloric deficit critical. His mind supplied unhelpfully. Cognitive function declining. Body temperature dropping. Need heat source. He adjusted his position, trying to curl tighter into himself. Suddenly, the heavy metal door of the warehouse across the alley groaned open. Izuku froze. He held his breath, making himself as small as possible. 3 men stepped out. They were big. The way they walked, heavy, confident, taking up space, screamed villain. Or at least criminals with strong quirks. The shipment is late, the first one grunted. He had spikes protruding from his shoulders. The broker is never late, the second one hissed. He was thin, jittery, scratching at his neck. Just wait. The trigger is coming. Trigger. Izuku's eyes widened. He knew what that was. He'd read about it on a discarded newspaper. A drug that boosted quirks to unstable levels. Highly illegal. Highly dangerous. He should run. He should find a police box. But his legs were numb, and the men were blocking the only exit to the main street. A shadow moved above them. Izuku blinked, looking up toward the fire escape of the building opposite the warehouse. Something was there. It wasn't human. It was small, sleek, and moved with a fluid grace that defied gravity. It hung upside down from the railing by its hind legs, obscured by the gloom. 2 triangular ears twitched. A long, bushy tail swayed silently. Mammalian, Izuku analyzed instantly. Mustelid family. Pine marten? No, too large. Anthropomorphic mutation? The creature dropped. It didn't land with a thud. It landed with a soft tap of rain on pavement. It stood on 2 legs, about 4 feet tall, wearing a tactical vest filled with pouches and a dark utility scarf. Its fur was a deep, rich brown, with a creamy patch on its throat. It adjusted a pair of high-tech goggles over its eyes. Gentlemen, the creature said. Its voice was smooth, calm, and oddly polite. I believe you are in violation of Code 44B regarding the trafficking of illicit quirk enhancers. The villains jumped, quirks activating. Spikes grew longer. The jittery one's hands began to glow. Who the hell is that? A rat? Spikes yelled. I am a pine marten, actually. Common misconception, the creature corrected, reaching into a pouch. Though my father is ambiguous. Kill it. The fight began instantly. Izuku watched, mesmerized. The creature, the marten, was outnumbered 3-1, and the villains were strong. But the marten wasn't fighting with strength. He was fighting with geometry. He ducked under a spike, swept the leg of the second villain, and used the momentum to bounce off the wall and kick the third in the jaw. But the villains were coordinating. The third villain, a brute with rock skin, was flanking. "Behind you!" Izuku shouted before he could stop himself. The Martin's ears swiveled. He didn't question the voice. He dropped flat instantly. A rock fist smashed into the wall where his head had been a millisecond prior. The Martin rolled, springing back to his feet near Izuku's dumpster. He glanced down, his goggles whirring as they zoomed in on the terrified boy. "Civilian?" the Martin asked, not looking away from the villains. Aye, stay down. The jittery one," Izuku stammered, his analysis overriding his fear. "His quirk is plasma-based, but he telegraphs. He scratches his neck before he fires. And the rock guy, he has a blind spot on his left side because of the mineral buildup on his neck." The Martin paused for a fraction of a second. A smirk revealed sharp, white teeth. "Is that so?" The jittery villain scratched his neck. "Now!" Izuku squeaked. The Martin moved. He dodged the plasma blast before it even left the villain's hand, closing the distance in a blur of brown fur. He struck a pressure point on the villain's neck. The man folded like a lawn chair. The rock villain roared, charging. "Left side!" The Martin chirped. He vaulted off a trash can, flipping over the brute's right shoulder to land in the blind spot. He slapped a small disc onto the rock skin. Beep! A shockwave of electricity discharged. The brute convulsed and fell. The spiked villain looked at his fallen comrades, then at the small animal and the dumpster. He roared, launching a volley of spikes. "Vector calculation!" Izuku yelled, seeing the angle of the villain's shoulder. 30 degrees low. Ricochet off the fire escape. The Martin didn't dodge. He simply took one step to the left. Clang! 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 The spikes bounced off the metal stairs, embedding themselves harmlessly into the asphalt exactly where the Martin had been standing. The Martin pulled a small pistol-like device from his vest, a tranquilizer gun. Thwip! The spiked villain grabbed his neck, stumbled, and collapsed face first into a puddle. Silence returned to the alley, save for the rain. Izuku sat trembling, clutching his knees. He had just helped in a vigilante fight. He was going to jail. He was going to. The Martin walked over. He didn't look threatening. He looked curious. He holstered the tranq gun and lifted his goggles, revealing sharp, intelligent black eyes. He sniffed the air. "You haven't eaten in 48 hours, the Martin stated. It wasn't a question. "Your cortisol levels are spiking, and you are hypothermic." Izuku stared. You took them down." "We took them down," the Martin corrected. He crouched so he was eye level with Izuku. "Your processing speed is exceptional. You predicted the plasma discharge trajectory before the somatic component was complete. Do you have a precognition quirk?" Izuku flinched. The question. Always the question. "No," he whispered, looking down. I'm quirkless." He waited for the sneer. He waited for the dismissal. The Martin tilted his head. His whiskers twitched. "Quirkless? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have interfered. I'm useless." "Useless?" The Martin made a chittering sound that sounded like a laugh. "Kid, you just calculated a trivector ricochet in under 2 seconds. That's not useless. That's operational efficiency." The Martin reached into a pouch and pulled out a foil-wrapped bar. He handed it to Izuku. "High-calorie nutrient block. Eat." Slowly, Izuku took it with shaking hands. He took a bite. It tasted like sawdust and chocolate, but it was the best thing he had ever eaten. "I am Kaisalu," the Martin said, standing up and tapping a communication piece in his ear. "Police are en route. We need to vanish." "We?" Izuku mumbled around a mouthful of food. Kaisalu looked at the boy, dirty, traumatized, brilliant, and abandoned by a society that only valued flashy powers. He saw the potential. He saw the mind ticking away behind those terrified green eyes. "You have nowhere to go, do you?" Izuku shook his head. Kaisalu sighed. It was a long, suffering sigh. "My father is going to be insufferable about this. He loves projects." He extended a furry, clawed hand toward Izuku. "Come with me. Unless you prefer the dumpster?" Izuku looked at the hand. It was an animal's hand. A predator's hand. But it was offering help. He took it. The car ride was a blur. Izuku fell asleep halfway through, the exhaustion finally winning. When he woke up, he wasn't in an alley. He was in a comfortable leather chair in a room that smelled of high-quality tea and old paper. He bolted upright, panic flaring. "Calm down," a familiar voice said. Izuku looked around. He was in a massive office. The walls were lined with bookshelves that reached the ceiling. Behind a gigantic mahogany desk sat a small white creature, a mix of mouse, dog, and bear, sipping from a teacup that said "World's Best Principal." Standing by the window, cleaning his goggles, was Kaisalu. He had removed his tactical vest and now wore a simple black turtleneck, looking like a furry Steve Jobs. Where am I?" Izuku squeaked. "You are at UA High School," the white creature said cheerfully. "I am Principal Nezu. And you, my dear boy, are an anomaly." Izuku's jaw dropped. "UA? The hero's school?" "The very same." Nezu hopped off his chair and walked around the desk. "My son tells me you dismantled the trigger smuggling operation using nothing but verbal analysis and a soup can." "Fascinating. Son?" Izuku looked between the white mouse and the brown marten. "Adoption," Kaisalu muttered. "Biologically, I am a pine marten modified with a quirk similar to his high specs. Mine is called tactical simulation. I run independent intelligence for the heroes." "He's a spy," Nezu clarified happily. "And an underground broker. It keeps him busy." Kaisalu rolled his eyes. "Father, please." Nezu turned his beady black eyes onto Izuku. They were intense. Izuku felt like he was being X-rayed. "So, Izuku Midoriya. Runaway. Ward of the state. Quirkless." Nezu said the word without malice, just as a fact. "Society has deemed you zero value. My son, however, claims you are a high-spec intellect." I just like to analyze," Izuku whispered. "Do you?" Nezu smiled. It was a smile full of teeth. "Let us test that." Nezu reached under his desk and pulled out a chessboard. He placed it on the low table in front of Izuku. "Do you know how to play?" "Yes," Izuku said. "I played, with myself. In the foster home." "Excellent. You are white. You move first." Izuku looked at the board. He looked at Nezu. He looked at Kaisalu, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. Izuku reached out and moved his pawn to e4. The game began. It was brutal. Nezu played fast. Incredibly fast. He didn't just play the board, he played Izuku. He made moves that seemed irrational, baiting Izuku, testing his confidence. But Izuku fell into a trance. The world narrowed down to the 64 squares. If knight to f3, bishop takes pawn. Weakness in the kingside defense. He's baiting me. It's a trap. But if I sacrifice the rook, Izuku's muttering started. Castle queenside. Divert attention. The diagonal is open. He wants me to push, but that exposes the center. Nezu's ears perked up. He listened to the muttering. His smile grew wider. Move 10. Izuku was sweating. Move 20. Izuku had lost both knights, but Nezu had lost the bishop and a rook. Move 30. The board was a slaughterhouse. Check, Nezu said, placing his queen aggressively. Izuku stared at the board. He was trapped. He was going to lose. But, if I move here, Izuku mumbled, his hand hovering over his king. I lose in 3 moves. But if I sacrifice the queen, he slammed his queen into Nezu's rook. Takes. Nezu paused. For the first time, the principal paused. He looked at the board. He looked at Izuku. A delay tactic? Nezu asked. No, Izuku said, his voice surprisingly steady. If you take my queen, your king is forced to d2. My bishop is on h6. It's a pin. You can't move your king back. I will still win, Nezu said. Yes, Izuku agreed. But it will take you 12 more moves instead of 3. And in those 12 moves, a variable might change. Nezu stared. Silence stretched in the office. Kaisalu stopped cleaning his goggles. Then Nezu started to laugh. It was a manic, cackling sound that echoed off the bookshelves. A variable! He hopes for a variable. Nezu clapped his paws together. He maximizes survival time to increase the probability of external interference. Logic applied to hopelessness. Marvelous. Nezu swept the pieces off the board with a swipe of his paw. You lost, Nezu said beaming. I know, but you lasted 42 moves against me. Most pro heroes last 15. All Might lasts 4, and that's because he tries to eat the pieces. Nezu jumped back onto his desk. He pulled a stack of papers from a drawer. Kaisalu. Yes, father? Get the stamping kit. And call the lawyers. Lawyers? Izuku asked, shrinking back. Am I in trouble? Nezu looked at him, his expression softening into something that was almost grandfatherly. Trouble? No, my boy. You are a resource. You are a mind that has been left to rot, and I do not waste resources. Nezu slammed a stamp onto the paper. How do you feel about the name Nezu added to your registry? Izuku blinked. What? Adoption, Kaisalu explained, stepping forward and placing a hand on Izuku's head. The fur felt warm. He wants to adopt you. Well, technically, he wants me to adopt you so he can be the doting grandfather who corrupts you, while I do the actual raising. Why? Izuku asked, tears welling in his eyes. I'm quirkless. I'm nobody. You are a variable, Nezu said softly. And in a world of constants, the variable is the most dangerous thing on the board. We are going to teach you, Izuku. We are going to sharpen that mind of yours until it cuts deeper than any sword. Nezu hopped down and extended a paw. Welcome to the food chain, Izuku. You are no longer prey. Izuku looked at the paw. He looked at Kaisalu. He looked at the scattered chess pieces. For the first time since the explosion, since the fire, since the cold nights in the alley, the shaking stopped. He took Nezu's paw. Thank you, he sobbed. Don't thank me yet, Nezu cackled, his eyes glinting with a terrifying light. Wait until you see your math homework. 2 weeks later, Izuku stood in front of a mirror in his new room. The room was strange. It had a bed, but also a complex jungle gym of pipes and vents that ran along the ceiling. Kaisalu insisted that upper body strength and 3D movement were essential. He wore a new set of clothes. Cargo pants with many pockets. A fitted shirt. And a scarf, a small, dark green utility scarf, mimicking Kaisalu's. He picked up a new notebook. Hero Analysis for the Future Volume 12, Reboot. He opened it to the first page. It was a sketch of himself. But he didn't look scared. He looked focused. There was a knock on the door. Izuku, Kaisalu's voice came through. Dinner. And father wants to discuss the geopolitical implications of the stir-fry. Coming, Dad, the words slipped out. Izuku froze. Silence on the other side of the door. Then, a soft chuffing sound. Hurry up, Kit. Before the tea gets cold. Izuku smiled. It wasn't the polite, terrified smile of Deku. It was a small, sharp smile. He closed the notebook. He wasn't Deku anymore. He was the variable. And he had a lot of work to do. The concept of home is a variable dependent on 3 primary factors: safety, sustenance, and the absence of immediate threat. For the first 10 years of his life, Izuku Midoriya's home had been a small apartment with a yellow door, smelling of jasmine tea and his mother's fabric softener. It was a soft world, a world of rounded edges and gentle smiles. His new home was angular. Izuku woke up. His eyes snapped open, scanning the environment instantly. 6 o'clock hours. Ambient temperature, 19 degrees Celsius. Light levels low. He was not in a bed. He was perched on top of a 7-foot-tall mahogany bookshelf, wrapped in a weighted blanket that smelled faintly of pine and antiseptic. The room Nezu had given him, situated in the private residence wing of the UA principal's office complex, was less a bedroom and more a cognitive playground. The floor was a grid of pressure plates, currently deactivated, but Nezu threatened to turn them on randomly to test reflexes. The walls were lined with climbing holds. A complex network of ventilation ducts crisscrossed the ceiling, some leading to the hallway, some leading to dead ends, and one, Izuku had discovered, leading directly to the cafeteria's pantry. Izuku uncurled himself. His back popped. He didn't sleep on the bed anymore. The bed was on the floor. The floor was where the threats were. High ground was tactical superiority. Good morning, Kit. Izuku didn't jump. He had learned in the last week that jumping wasted energy. Instead, he swiveled his head toward the ventilation grate in the corner of the room. Two glowing eyes reflected the dim LED of his alarm clock. "Good morning, Dad," Izuku whispered. The words still felt strange on his tongue, like a foreign coin, but Kaisalu insisted on it. Or rather, he insisted on not being called Mr. Kaisalu or Sir. The grate popped open. Kaisalu dropped into the room, landing silently on the carpet. He was out of his tactical gear, wearing a pair of gray sweatpants and a loose t-shirt that read "I'm with the rodent dash." "Sleep well?" Kaisalu asked, his ears twitching as he surveyed the room. He noted Izuku's position on the bookshelf with a ching sound of approval. "REM cycle was uninterrupted for 6 hours, Izuku reported, sliding down the side of the shelf using the climbing holds. "I dreamed about logic gates. Better than dreaming about the fire," Kaisalu said softly. The atmosphere in the room shifted. The heaviness of the trauma was still there, a ghost haunting the corners of Izuku's mind. But here, in this fortress of intellect, the ghost was analyzed, categorized, and filed away. "Breakfast," Kaisalu announced, changing the subject. "Father is attempting to use the espresso machine again. We need to intervene before he vibrates through the floorboards." The kitchen of the high-specs household was a study in chaos theory. Principal Nezu, the genius mouse bear dog who ran the most prestigious hero school in the country, was currently standing on the kitchen counter. He was wearing a tiny apron that said "Kiss the Cook," which was terrifying, given his sharp teeth, and was aggressively staring down a toaster. "The thermal coils are heating unevenly," Nezu declared as Izuku and Kaisalu entered. "This is inefficient. I should dismantle it and replace the filaments with tungsten carbide alloy." "Please just make toast, grandfather," Izuku said, climbing onto his designated stool. "Toast is a variable," Nezu chirped. "Bread density, moisture content, coil temperature. It's all math, Izuku." "Everything is math," Kaisalu sighed, opening the refrigerator. He rummaged around for a moment before pulling out a Tupperware container. "Here," Kaisalu said, sliding a bowl in front of Izuku. Izuku looked down. It was a bowl of high-grade, freeze-dried mice pellets mixed with raw salmon. Izuku stared at it. He looked up at Kaisalu. "Dad?" "Yes? I am a human." Kaisalu blinked, his whiskers twitching. He looked at the bowl, then back at Izuku. "It has all the essential macronutrients. Protein, taurine, omega-3s. It promotes a glossy coat." "I don't have a coat," Izuku pointed out gently. "And human teeth aren't designed for pellets." Kaisalu looked genuinely distressed. He tapped his claws on the granite countertop. "Right. Humans. Cooked food. Thermal decomposition of proteins to aid digestion." "I knew that. I can cook," Izuku offered. "Mom taught me." He paused. The mention of Inko made his chest tighten, but he forced the analysis to override the grief. Grief is a chemical reaction. Cortisol. Adrenaline drop. Breathe. "Mom taught me how to make rice and miso soup." Kaisalu's ears lowered. He reached out, his paw resting on Izuku's shoulder. The pads were rough but warm. "That would be acceptable. I will acquire the necessary ingredients." "Is the salmon acceptable, or does it require thermal application as well?" "Cooked salmon is good," Izuku smiled weakly. Nezu turned from the toaster, his black eyes gleaming. "Excellent. A chemistry experiment. Izuku, calculate the optimal water-to-rice ratio based on the humidity of the room." "Grandfather, it's just breakfast." "Nothing is just anything." Nezu cackled, hopping down from the counter. "Now eat up. Today, we begin your real education. The public school system is designed for the median. You, my boy, are an outlier, and outliers require special calibration." The special calibration took place in what Nezu called the strategy room. It was a soundproof chamber lined with servers, multiple monitors, and a holographic projector table that cost more than Izuku's old apartment building. Izuku sat in a chair that was slightly too big for him, his feet dangling. "Lesson 1, Nezu said, pacing back and forth on the table. "Society defines power through quirks. This is a fundamental logical error. A quirk is merely a tool. Like a hammer. Or a nuclear warhead." Nezu tapped a remote. The screens flared to life, showing a complex network of code. Tell me, Izuku. What is the most dangerous weapon in the world? Izuku thought. All Might? Incorrect. Nezu beamed. All Might is a deterrent. He is a blunt instrument. No, the most dangerous weapon is information. Nezu pointed to the screen. This is the security firewall for the Muzudafu traffic control grid. It is protected by government-grade encryption. A villain with a strength quirk could punch a car. A villain with an intelligence quirk could turn every traffic light green simultaneously, causing mass casualties without ever throwing a punch. Izuku stared at the flowing lines of code. To anyone else, it would look like gibberish. But to Izuku, he squinted. He didn't see gibberish. He saw patterns, loop, variable, if/then statement, trapdoor. It's messy, Izuku mumbled. Nezu stopped pacing. Explain. Izuku pointed at a block of red text. That loop there. It repeats unnecessary checks. It slows down the processing speed by 0.04 seconds. And there, line 405, there's a syntax redundancy. If you input a prime number into the maintenance override, the system creates a logic gap. Nezu looked at Kaisulu, who was leaning against the wall, arms crossed. I told you, Kaisulu said, a hint of pride in his voice. He sees the matrix. Fascinating, Nezu murmured. He pushed a keyboard toward Izuku. Explode it. What? Hack the traffic grid, Izuku. Turn the light outside the school gates blue. Isn't that illegal? Izuku asked, his old rule-following self flaring up. We are the authority here. Nezu laughed. Besides, I wrote the system. I'm giving you permission to break my own lock. Do it. Izuku hesitated. His hands hovered over the keys. He had never typed code before. But the logic was just like analyzing a hero fight. The firewall is the villain's shield. The redundancy is the crack in the armor. The prime number is the smash. His fingers began to move. Slowly at first, hunting and pecking. Then faster. His brain felt like it was expanding. For the first time in his life, his muttering wasn't annoying to those around him. It was the soundtrack to his work. Bypass proxy, reroute through the auxiliary server, disable the checksum. Click. On the main monitor, the live feed of the UA front gate showed the traffic light. It blinked once. Then, it turned a brilliant, confusing shade of blue. Izuku sat back, panting slightly. His brain felt hot. Time, 4 minutes 32 seconds, Nezu announced, checking his pocket watch. Sloppy typing, but the logic was impeccable. He looked at Izuku with a serious expression. You are quirkless, Izuku. The world says you are empty. But this. Nezu gestured to the screen. This is the domain where biology does not matter. Here you are a god. You are a ghost. You are the variable that they cannot punch. Izuku looked at his hands. They were small. Scared. But they had just changed the world, even if only a traffic light. Am I smart? Izuku asked, his voice trembling. Kaisula stepped forward and ruffled Izuku's hair. You're not just smart, Kit. You're dangerous. And that's better. The weeks bled into months. Izuku's life became a regimen of mental and physical conditioning that would have broken a normal child. But Izuku wasn't normal. He was desperate. He was a sponge that had been dry for 10 years, suddenly thrown into the ocean. 5 o'clock physical conditioning. Kaisula didn't believe in gym memberships. He believed in predatory locomotion. Stop running like a prey animal. Kaisula barked. They were in Ground Gamma, the industrial labyrinth training zone. It was dawn. The mist was thick. Izuku was jogging on the pavement. Kaisula was running on the walls. Humans run upright. Izuku panted. It's biomechanics. Humans are slow. Kaisula dropped down, landing on all fours and sprinting past Izuku with terrifying speed. Lower your center of gravity. Use your hands. The environment is not a background, it is a tool, Izuku tried. He dropped low. He felt ridiculous. He felt like he was playing make-believe, but then he tripped. He fell forward. Instead of face-planting, he remembered Kaisula's movement. He tucked his shoulder, rolled, and used the momentum to spring back up. Better. Kaisala called out from atop a crane. Now climb up here. If you fall, you land in the mud. Izuku looked at the crane. It was 50 feet high. Variables, Izuku muttered. Friction coefficient of the steel is low due to morning dew. Grip strength required is high. Wind speed is 5 knots from the north. He didn't climb the ladder. That was what people expected. He climbed the lattice struts inside the crane arm. It was tighter, but it offered more stability. When he reached the top, sweaty and shaking, Kaisala handed him a water bottle. You took the inside route, Kaisala noted. Less wind exposure, Izuku gasped. Harder to be seen from the ground. Kaisala smiled. Good. You're thinking like a hider. Soon you'll think like a hunter. 1300 hours academic acceleration. Izuku didn't go to regular school. Nezu had legally classified him as a specialized homeschool student, which was legalese for my grandson is too smart for your curriculum. He burned through the middle school curriculum in 3 months. Nezu taught him math, physics, and chemistry. Present Mike, who was terrified of Nezu, came in to teach English. Midnight taught art history, and surprisingly, modern ethics. But the real lessons were with Nezu. They played games. Chess. Go. Shogi. Poker. Poker is about lying, Nezu explained, shuffling the deck with one paw. You are a terrible liar, Izuku. You wear your heart on your sleeve. It is disgusting. I can't help it. Izuku cried, looking at his hand. 2 pair, kings and sixes. You must separate the emotion from the data, Nezu said. He bet a single cookie. Your face twitched when you looked at your cards. You have a good hand. But you are afraid I have a better one. Do you? It doesn't matter if I do, Nezu grinned. It matters if I can convince you that I do. Nezu raised the bet to the entire jar of cookies. Izuku looked at Nezu. He analyzed. Nezu's tail was still. His eyes were wide. It was the innocent look. He's bluffing. Call, Izuku said, pushing his chips forward. Nezu flipped his cards. A royal flush. I wasn't bluffing, Nezu cackled, taking the cookies. I was baiting. Never assume, Izuku. Verify. Izuku groaned, putting his head on the table. I hate this game. Again Nezu commanded. 1900 hours the analysis. This was the sacred time. After dinner, the family sat in the living room. Most families watched sitcoms. The Nezu household watched hero fight compilations on the dark web. Video 44B, Kaisala announced, putting a disc into the player. Endeavor vs. The Glass Giant. Fukuoka Incident. 3 years ago. On the screen, the flaming hero roared, unleashing a torrent of fire against the villain made of reflective glass. Critique, Nezu ordered, sipping his tea. Izuku watched. His eyes darted back and forth. He pulled out his notebook. Endeavor is relying on brute thermal output, Izuku mumbled. The villain is reflective. The heat is being deflected. He's melting the asphalt around him, causing structural damage to the buildings. Inefficient. Solution? Kaisala asked. Rapid cooling, Izuku said. Or physical impact. Glass is brittle. Endeavor should have concentrated his flame into a pinpoint jet to superheat a single joint, then physically struck it to induce thermal shock shattering. Instead, he's just burning everything. Correct, Nezu said. Endeavor fights for spectacle. He fights for dominance. He does not fight for efficiency. And that is why he will never be number 1. Izuku paused. He looked at the number 2 hero on the screen. A man he used to admire for his power. Now, he just looked wasteful. Power makes you lazy, Izuku whispered. Precisely, Nezu said softly. When you have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. But you, Izuku, you have a scalpel. You have to understand the anatomy of the problem before you can cut. 6 months later, the first real test of nurture came on a Tuesday. Kaisala had decided that Izuku needed social integration practice. This meant going to the mall. Izuku wore a hoodie. He felt exposed. The mall was loud. Too many variables. Too many people. Relax, Kaisala said. He was in his human disguise, a holographic projection device created by the support course that made him look like a tired, unshaven man in a trench coat. It flickered if he moved too fast, so he walked slowly. We're just buying hardware. Power loader needs copper wire. They were in the hardware store when it happened. A group of middle schoolers was loitering in the aisle. Izuku recognized the uniforms. Aldera Junior High. His old district. He froze. Hey, look at this, one of the boys sneered, picking up a wrench. I bet I could crush a skull with this. It wasn't Bakugo. It was just a generic bully. Someone Izuku had avoided in the hallways 1,000 times. The boy turned and saw Izuku. Whoa! Look at the shrimp. The boy laughed. He stepped forward, towering over Izuku. What are you looking at? You got a staring problem? Old Izuku would have stuttered. Old Izuku would have apologized. Old Izuku would have flinched. But Izuku had spent 6 months living with an apex predator and a super genius. Izuku looked at the boy. Time seemed to slow down. Target, male. Approximate 14 years old. Posture, aggressive, leaning forward. Center of gravity, unstable. Hands clenched on the wrench. Knuckles white. Intent, intimidation, probable physical escalation. Variable 1, the wrench. Heavy. Slow swing speed. Variable 2, the shelves. Industrial steel. Confined space. Variable 3, Kaisalu is watching. Waiting. Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't step back. He tilted his head to the side. His eyes narrowed slightly. He let out a soft breath. Your stance is open, Izuku said. His voice was quiet, devoid of the trembling that used to define him. Ha! The bully blinked. You're leaning too far forward, Izuku continued, his eyes dissecting the boy. If you swing that wrench, your right side will be exposed for 0.8 seconds. You have a bruise on your left shin. Soccer injury? That means you can't pivot effectively on that leg. If I step inside your guard, I can dislocate your knee with approximately 15 pounds of pressure before you complete the arc of your swing. Izuku took 1 step forward. Just 1. Do you want to test the hypothesis? The air in the aisle grew cold. Izuku wasn't shouting. He wasn't glowing with power. He was just stating facts. And in his eyes there was a flash of something that wasn't human. It was the Nezu glint, the look of a scientist observing a lab rat. The bully turned pale. The primal part of his brain, the lizard brain that detects predators, screamed at him. Danger. Wrong. Run. You're a freak. The bully stammered. He dropped the wrench. It clattered loudly on the floor. The boy turned and ran, his friends scrambling after him. Izuku stood there. He looked at the wrench. He picked it up and placed it back on the shelf, aligning it perfectly with the others. Excessive verbal output, Kaisalu commented from behind him. But effective psychological warfare. Izuku turned. He was shaking slightly, but not from fear. From adrenaline. I didn't feel scared, Izuku whispered. I just saw the math. Kaisalu smiled, the holographic disguise flickering to reveal his sharp-toothed grin for a second. That's because you stopped seeing him as a monster, Kit. You saw him as a problem to be solved. Kaisalu placed a hand on Izuku's head. Let's get the copper wire. Power loader gets cranky when he waits. 1 year later, Izuku was 12. The transformation was subtle physically, but drastic mentally. He wasn't built like a tank. He was built like a wire. Lean muscle, flexible joints. He moved with a silence that unnerved the UA staff. He had become a fixture at UA. The principal's shadow. He spent his afternoons in the support lab with Power Loader, learning mechanics. He spent his evenings in the vents, listening to conversations, information gathering, Nezu called it. But something was missing. It was late. Izuku was in the strategy room again. He was staring at a news report. A building collapse. Heroes were digging through the rubble. He paused the video. He zoomed in. There, he pointed. Nezu looked up from his book. What do you see? The structural beam, Izuku said. The heroes are lifting the debris from the top. But the load-bearing stress is on the bottom right quadrant. If they lift that slab, the secondary pocket will collapse. And there's a thermal signature in that pocket, Izuku said, tapping the screen. A survivor. If they lift, the survivor dies. Nezu nodded. A tragic oversight. It's not just tragic, Izuku snapped. It's wrong. They're heroes. They should know this. Why don't they see it? Because they are trained to punch, Izuku. Not to think. Izuku stared at the screen. He watched the heroes lift the slab. The feed cut out as dust billowed. The ticker later confirmed, 1 casualty found in rubble. Izuku slammed his fist onto the desk. It didn't hurt. He was too angry to feel it. I could have told them, he hissed. If I was there. I could have told them where to lift. But you were not there, Nezu said calmly. And even if you were, why would they listen to a quirkless child? Izuku turned to his grandfather. His eyes were burning green. Then I'll make them listen, Nezu smiled. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The transition from passive observer to active participant. How? Nezu asked. I need access, Izuku said. I need a way to communicate with them. Secure channels? Hero networks? Police frequencies? That is highly illegal, Izuku. Vigilantism via information. I don't care, Izuku said. I can see the variables. I can save them. If I don't use the data is wasted. And you said waste is the ultimate sin. Nezu's tail began to wag. It thumped rhythmically against the chair. Kaisalu! Nezu barked. The vent cover popped open. Kaisalu dropped down. I'm here. The boy is ready for Phase 2, Nezu announced. He wants to enter the game. Kaisalu looked at Izuku. He saw the fire. He saw the predator finally waking up. The Oracle Protocol? Kaisalu asked. The Oracle Protocol, Nezu confirmed. Nezu stood up on his chair. He spread his arms wide. Very well, Izuku. We will build you a mask. Not of spandex, but of code. You will be the voice in their ear. The ghost in the machine. You will save them, and they will never know your name. I don't need glory, Izuku said, turning back to the screens, his fingers already flying across the keyboard to access the Hero Network servers. I just need to optimize the survival rate. Nezu and Kaisalu exchanged a look. They had done it. They had taken a frightened, broken rabbit and turned him into something else entirely. Nature had made him quirkless. Nurture had made him dangerous. Welcome to the dark, Oracle, Nezu whispered. Izuku didn't answer. He was already working, the first intervention. It was 3 days later. A minor villain attack in the Shibuya district. A villain with a slime-based quirk was holding a hostage in a bank. The heroes on the scene, Kamui Woods and Death Arms, were stalled. We can't get in. Kamui shouted over the comms. The slime has sealed the doors. If I use lacquered chain prison, I might hit the hostages. Just smash the door. Death Arms yelled. No! Static crackled in their earpieces. Then a voice. It was synthesized, distorted, impossible to identify. But it was calm. Cold. Logical. Do not breach the front door. Kamui Woods froze. Who is this? This is a secure channel. The slime is highly conductive, the voice continued, ignoring the question. The building's sprinkler system is fed by a chemical reservoir on the roof, an old fire suppression mix containing saline. If you trigger the sprinklers, the saline will disrupt the slime's cohesion. How do you know that? I accessed the building schematics. The valve is on the north wall, exterior. Third pipe from the left. Break it. Death Arms looked at Kamui. Is he serious? Do we have a choice? Kamui asked. Death Arms grunted. He ran to the north wall. He saw the pipe. He punched it. Water mixed with saline sprayed into the bank. Inside, the villain screamed as his body lost cohesion. The slime dissolved into puddles. The hostages ran out, coughing but unharmed. Kamui Woods tapped his earpiece. Target secured. Who are you? Silence. Then, the voice returned, faint and ghost-like. Call me Oracle. The line went dead. Back in the high-specs household, Izuku took off the headset. He was sweating. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Heart rate, 140 BPM, Kaisalu noted, reading the biometrics on the screen. Adrenaline spike. Did it work? Nezu asked from the doorway. Izuku looked at the news feed. Breaking news. Heroes foil bank heist with ingenious strategy. Izuku smiled. It was the smile. Too wide. Too many teeth. Mission successful, Izuku said. Optimal outcome achieved. He spun his chair around. Who's next? 4 years later. The internet is not a cloud. It is an ocean. To the average person, it is a surface-level experience. Waves of social media, currents of news, the occasional storm of controversy. But beneath the surface, there is the deep. The dark fiber. The encrypted trenches where the sunlight of the law does not reach. In the depths of this ocean, there was a legend. They called him Oracle. He was a ghost story whispered among underground heroes and nervous sidekicks. He was the faceless entity who could sell you the blueprints to a villain's hideout for the price of a donation to a cat shelter. He was the voice that hijacked police comms to correct a hostage negotiator's grammar, and then provide the psychological profile needed to end the standoff. Some said Oracle was a rogue AI developed by Island. Others claimed he was a vigilante with a technopathy quirk. In reality, Oracle was a 14-year-old boy sitting in a dark room, wearing pajama pants covered in all-might patterns, eating a cup of instant ramen with chopsticks while 3 monitors reflected in his green eyes. Target acquisition confirmed, Izuku Midoriya mumbled, a headset pressed over one ear. Hero, Mount Lady. Status, Rookie. Debut performance. Current location, Tatooine Station. On the center screen, a live feed from a traffic camera showed a giant woman battling a villain with a gigantification quirk. It was clumsy. It was flashy. It was inefficient. Izuku tapped a key. Canyon Cannon is effective, he muttered to himself, typing rapidly into a secure forum used by hero agency analysts. But she's causing excessive collateral damage to the road's surface. Municipality repair costs will deduct 15% from her debut paycheck. Inefficient. The door to his room, now significantly upgraded from the simple bedroom of his childhood, hissed open. Kaisula leaned against the frame. He was older now, the gray in his muzzle slightly more pronounced, but his movements were just as fluid. He held a tablet. You're trending, Kaisula said dryly. Izuku spun his chair around. Am I? The Oracle handle just cracked the encryption on the Creature Rejection Clan's manifesto and leaked it to the police. They were planning a raid on a mutation counseling center. Their encryption was pathetic, Izuku said, taking a slurp of ramen. They used a substitution cipher based on a 1990s hate speech pamphlet. It took me 12 seconds. 12 seconds to save a few dozen lives, Kaisula noted, his tail twitching with pride. Father is pleased. He says it's delightful chaos. Grandfather thinks a vending machine malfunction is delightful chaos, Izuku countered. True. Kaisula stepped into the room, glancing at the screens. You should get ready. You have school. Izuku's shoulders slumped. The light in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a dull resignation. School, he repeated. The inefficient use of time. Social camouflage, Kaisula corrected. You need a diploma to take the UA entrance exam legally. And you need to maintain the persona of Izuku Midoriya, the quirkless, quiet, harmless nobody. If people connect Midoriya to Oracle, the game is over. Izuku sighed, standing up and stretching. His body cracked in 3 places. At 14, he was no longer the scrawny child. Under the baggy middle school uniform, he was wiry and compact, built like a gymnast or a rock climber. His hands were calloused from scaling brick walls and soldering circuit boards. Fine, Nezu said. I'll go. But if the teacher asks me to solve a quadratic equation again, I might scream. It takes longer to write the answer than to solve it. Restrain yourself, Kit, Kaisula advised, handing him his yellow backpack. Remember, bland. Boring. Invisible. Izuku slung the bag over his shoulder. He adjusted his posture, hunching forward, letting his eyes lose their focus. He transformed from the sharp, predatory analyst into Deku. Bland, Izuku repeated. I can do bland. Aldera Junior High was a cesspool of mediocrity. It was a place where teachers ignored quirk discrimination because it was easier than paperwork, and where potential was measured solely by the flashiness of one's power. Izuku sat in his usual seat at the back. He didn't take notes. He had memorized the textbook in the first week of the semester. Instead, he was sketching a schematic for a wrist-mounted grappling device in the margins of his notebook, coded in a cipher he and Nezu had invented over breakfast. Midoriya. The teacher's voice cut through his thoughts. Izuku looked up, blinking. Why, yes, sir? Since you're so intent on scribbling, perhaps you can tell the class the answer to problem 4? The class snickered. They expected the stutter. They expected the sweat. Izuku glanced at the board. Variable x. Slope-intercept. -4/3, Izuku mumbled, lowering his head. Correct, the teacher said, sounding disappointed. He turned back to the board. Now, as I was saying regarding career forms, Izuku felt eyes on him. Burning red eyes. He didn't look. He knew who it was, Katsuki Bakugo. Their relationship had evolved, or devolved, into something strange over the last 4 years. Bakugo used to bully him relentlessly. But around the second year of middle school, something changed. Izuku stopped reacting. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. When Bakugo yelled, Izuku would just watch him. He would stare at Bakugo's hands, his stance, his breathing. It unnerved Bakugo. It made the explosion stop, replaced by a tense, confused aggression. Bakugo felt like he was trying to intimidate a brick wall. Or worse, a mirror. The bell rang. Hey, Deku! Izuku began packing his bag. He didn't speed up. He didn't slow down. Bakugo slammed his hand onto Izuku's desk. Smoke curled from his palm. We ain't done, Bakugo growled. The teacher said you're applying to UA. You got a death wish? Izuku paused. He looked up at Bakugo. It is the only school with a specialized heroics curriculum that matches my academic projections, Izuku said quietly. It is the logical choice. Logical? Bakugo's eye twitched. You're quirkless. You can't be a hero without a quirk. You'll die in the entrance exam, perhaps, Izuku said. He stood up. He was shorter than Bakugo, but he didn't shrink away. But the statistical probability of acceptance is not 0. Therefore, I will attempt it. Don't give me that robot crap. Bakugo grabbed Izuku's collar. Instantly, Izuku's mind engaged. Point of contact, collar. Heat rising. Grip strength, moderate. Right arm cocked for explosion. Left leg forward. Unbalanced. Countermeasure. Izuku's hand twitched. He could grab Bakugo's wrist, twist the radius, and use his own momentum to slam Bakugo's face into the desk. It would take 0.5 seconds. Consequence, suspension. Police involvement. Nezu would be disappointed in the lack of subtlety. Izuku forced his hand to relax. He went limp. Kaken, Izuku said, his voice flat. You're going to be late for the arcade. Kirishima is waiting. Bakugo blinked. He let go, shoving Izuku back. Don't tell me what to do, nerd. And don't think you can stand in my ring. I'm gonna be the only one from this dump to make it to UA. Bakugo stormed out, his lackeys trailing behind. Izuku adjusted his collar. He checked the fabric for burn marks. None. Acceptable. He walked out of the classroom. You have no idea, Izuku whispered to the empty hallway. The ring is much bigger than you think. The walk home was usually uneventful. Izuku took a specific route, alleys and side streets that avoided major pedestrian congestion. It was faster, and it allowed him to practice his parkour when no one was watching. He was passing under the Tatooine underpass when the variables shifted. The air pressure dropped. The smell of sewage spiked. Fluid dynamics, Izuku thought instantly. Sudden displacement of volume. He stopped walking. He didn't turn around. He reached into his pocket and closed his hand around a small, metallic cylinder, a medium-sized invisibility cloak. A wet, gurgling voice rasped from the manhole cover behind him. You'll do, the sludge villain. Izuku spun around. The villain surged forward, a mass of green, viscous fluid with manic eyes and gritted teeth. Don't worry, kid! It'll only hurt for 45 seconds. Izuku didn't scream. He didn't freeze. He analyzed. Target, fluid body. No solid grab points. Vulnerability, eyes and mouth. Viscosity suggests vulnerability to sonic disruption or dehydration. The slime lunged. Izuku moved. He didn't run away. He sidestepped, letting the slime crash into the tunnel wall. Slippery little. Izuku pulled the cylinder from his pocket. It was a prototype from the UA support lab, a high-frequency sonic emitter disguised as a keychain, covering ears, Izuku mumbled. He pressed the button and clamped his hands over his own ears. Scree! The sound was agonizing. A high-pitched squeal that bounced off the concrete walls of the tunnel. The sludge villain recoiled, his liquid body rippling uncontrollably. GAH. What is that? Sonic resonance disrupts surface tension. Izuku shouted over the noise. You can't hold your form. It was working. The villain was puddling, unable to grab him. But then, the variable changed again. The manhole cover flew into the air. Have no fear! A massive figure erupted from the sewer. Blonde hair. Muscles upon muscles. A smile that defied physics. For I am here, All Might. The sonic device was still screaming. All Might flinched, clutching his head. Good heavens! My ears! Izuku turned off the device instantly. Texas. Smash! All Might threw a punch. The wind pressure alone was like a hurricane. The sludge villain didn't stand a chance. He was splattered against the tunnel walls, reduced to scattered droplets. Izuku shielded his face from the wind. When he looked up, the number one hero was standing there, steaming slightly. Apologies for the noise, young man. All Might boomed, scooping the slime into empty soda bottles with terrifying speed. I am in a bit of a rush. Thank you for whatever that noise was. Distracted him nicely. Izuku stared. He had analyzed All Might for years. He had watched every video. He knew the stats. But seeing him up close, respiration heavy, sweat volume excessive, posture favors the left side. He's tired? Can I? Izuku started. Can I ask you a question? All Might paused. He looked at the boy. Green hair. Intense eyes. A utility belt that looked a bit too professional for a middle schooler. A quick one. I have to get this villain to the police. You're injured, Izuku said. All Might froze. I beg your pardon? Your left side, Izuku pointed. Your center of gravity is shifted. You're favoring your right leg to compensate for a weakness in the left oblique. And there's blood on your teeth. Internal hemorrhage? All Might's smile didn't falter, but his eyes widened. Perceptive? Just a bit of roughhousing. Nothing to worry about. Now I really must go. All Might leaped. He soared into the sky, creating a sonic boom. Izuku watched him go. He's running out of time, Izuku noted. He looked down. One of the soda bottles had fallen out of All Might's pocket during the jump. The sludge villain was inside. It was looking at him. Oh, Izuku said. That's a critical failure in containment protocol. The chaos in the shopping district started 20 minutes later. Izuku heard the explosions first. He saw the smoke. He ran. Not because he wanted to be a hero, but because the data suggested a catastrophic event. And where there was catastrophe, there was Oracle. When he arrived, the scene was a nightmare. The sludge villain had escaped the bottle, probably when it hit the ground, and had found a new host. Explosions rocked the street. Fire was everywhere. The heroes, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady, were useless. I can't get close. Death Arms yelled, shielding his face. The explosions are too frequent. My wood will catch fire. Kamui shouted. I can't fit in the alley. Empty Lady cried. Izuku stood at the back of the crowd. He pulled his hood up. He adjusted his goggles, which he always carried in his bag. He looked at the villain. The slime had engulfed someone. A boy. Blonde hair. Red eyes. Bakugo. Bakugo was struggling. He was firing explosions wildly, which only fed the case. He looked terrified. Izuku's mind went cold. The world turned into a grid. Target, sludge villain. Host, Katsuki Bakugo. Threat level, critical. Time until asphyxiation, less than 60 seconds. Heroes stalled. None possessed the necessary quirk compatibility. Conclusion, intervention required. Izuku didn't wait. He didn't ask for permission. He moved. He didn't run in screaming like a shonen protagonist. He ran in like a Spec Ops soldier. He ducked under the police tape. Hey! Kid! Get back! Death Arms shouted. Izuku ignored him. He sprinted toward the fire. He analyzed the flame patterns. Gap in the convection current at 3 o'clock. He dove through the gap. He reached the villain. The sludge villain saw him. You again? The noisy brat. I'll kill you! The villain lashed out with a tendril of slime. Izuku slid on his knees, ducking the strike. He reached into his backpack. He didn't have a weapon. He had his school supplies. Variable chemistry. He pulled out a can of compressed air, for cleaning electronics, and a lighter, for shrinking heat shrink tubing. Don't breathe, Izuku muttered. He sprayed the compressed air directly into the villain's massive eye, holding the can upside down so it sprayed freezing liquid propellant. Gah! Cold! The villain recoiled, his fluid body stiffening where the liquid hit. Izuku didn't stop. He threw his backpack at the villain's mouth, not to hurt him, but to trigger a gag reflex. The bag hit the slime. The villain flinched. Bakugo's face emerged for a split second. He gasped for air. Deku? Bakugo wheezed. What the hell? Stop exploding! Izuku ordered, his voice cutting through the noise. You're creating a thermal updraft that's feeding him. Use a focused blast on his right side. It's less viscous because of the freezing spray. Don't tell me what to do. But Bakugo listened. He aimed his right hand. Boom! The blast hit the frozen section of slime. It shattered. The villain's grip loosened. Detroit. Smash! The wind returned. All Might appeared from the smoke, blood trickling from his mouth, but his fist ready. He capitalized on the opening Izuku had created. He punched the air so hard the weather changed. Rain began to fall. The villain was scattered. Bakugo was free. Izuku was blown back, skidding across the pavement. He sat up, coughing. The crowd went silent. Then they cheered, but the heroes weren't cheering. Death Arms marched over to Izuku. Are you insane? You could have gotten yourself killed. That was reckless. You don't have a license. Kamui Woods nodded. You interfered with a villain incident. That's vigilantism, kid. Izuku stood up. He dusted off his knees. He looked at the pros. Reckless? Izuku asked calmly. I calculated the thermal variance of the flames. I exploited the villain's weakness to cold. I created an opening for the hostage to breathe. You stood there and watched. We were waiting for a suitable quirk. Death Arms argued. You were waiting for a miracle, Izuku corrected. I brought a variable. You little. Death Arms reached out to grab Izuku's shoulder. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The voice was polite, cheerful, and terrified everyone present. From the shadow of a nearby building, a small figure emerged. He was wearing a tailored suit. Principal Nezu walked into the light. Principal Nezu? Death Arms froze. What are you doing here? Picking up my grandson, Nezu said, his tail twitching dangerously. He walked over to Izuku and patted his leg. Excellent tactical deployment, Izuku. Though the backpack throw was a bit crude. Improvised projectile, Izuku murmured. I panicked slightly. Understandable. Nezu turned to the heroes. His smile vanished. Now. You were scolding a civilian for doing your job? Shall we discuss the legality of negligence? Or perhaps I should review your agency's funding applications for the next fiscal year? Death Arms paled. We know, sir. We were just concerned for his safety. I am sure you were. Nezu looked at All Might, who was standing in the rain, steaming. And you, All Might. We need to talk. All Might flinched. Ah. Principal Nezu. Ah, yes. Car, Nezu ordered. A sleek black town car pulled up. The window rolled down to reveal Kaisalu in the driver's seat, looking annoyed. Get in, Izuku, Kaisalu said. And bring the loud one. He's bleeding on the pavement. The secure conference room at Yui was quiet. All Might sat on one side of the table. In a puff of smoke, he had deflated. The muscle-bound giant was gone, replaced by a skeletal, gaunt man with sunken eyes. Izuku sat opposite him, notebook out. Nezu sat at the head of the table, pouring tea. So, Nezu started. Tashinori Yagi. Or should I say the eighth? All Might, Tashinori, spat out a mouthful of blood. You know, I am a genius, Nezu said simply. And I have archives. It wasn't hard to track the sudden emergence of a power stockpiling quirk through history. Izuku was staring at Tashinori. He wasn't looking at the face. He was looking at the wound on his side, visible through the torn shirt. Respiratory system compromised, Izuku muttered, his pen flying across the page. Gastrectomy, complete removal of the stomach? The scar tissue suggests a massive blunt force trauma. 5 years ago? The fight with Toxic Chainsaw? No, Toxic Chainsaw didn't have the output for that. This was something else. Toshinori looked at the boy. He's analyzing my autopsy while I'm sitting here. It's how he copes. Nezu waved a paw. Continue, Izuku. Izuku looked up. Your quirk. It's not natural, is it? Toshinori blinked. What makes you say that? Natural quirks manifest by age 4, Izuku said. But your physical strength fluctuates. And the nature of one for all, the name implies a collection. A transfer. Izuku's eyes locked onto Toshinori's. You can give it away. Silence. Absolute silence in the room. Toshinori looked at Nezu. Is this kid a psychic? No, Nezu beamed. Just observant. Toshinori sighed. He slumped in his chair. You're right. Young man, you are right about everything. I am dying. My power is fading. And I am looking for a successor. He looked at Izuku. He saw the fire in the boy's eyes. He saw the bravery in the alley. He saw the mind that dismantled a villain's situation in seconds. I saw you today, All Might said softly. You moved when others stood still. You thought when others panicked. You are quirkless. But you were more of a hero than anyone else on that street. All Might stood up. He pointed a bony finger at Izuku. Izuku Midoriya. I deem you worthy to inherit my power. I want you to accept one for all. Izuku dropped his pen. The offer. The dream. The thing he had wanted since he was 4 years old. To be like All Might. To save everyone with a smile. But Izuku wasn't 4 years old anymore. He was 14. He was Oracle. He was Nezu's student. He looked at All Might. He looked at the skeleton of a man who had sacrificed his body for peace. No, Izuku said. All Might choked. What? Nezu hid a smile behind his teacup. I mean, Izuku stood up, pacing the room. I accept the responsibility. Someone has to do it, and statistically, giving it to someone with a pre-existing quirk could cause a quirk singularity overload, reducing their lifespan. Since I am an empty vessel, I am the optimal candidate. Okay. All Might looked confused. So yes? Yes, but with conditions, Izuku said, turning to face him. Conditions? Look at you. Izuku gestured to All Might's emaciated form. You are a cautionary tale. You relied on brute force until your body collapsed. You hide your injury. You act as the sole pillar of peace, which means when you break, society breaks. That is a fundamental structural flaw. Izuku walked up to the number 1 hero. If I take this power, I am not going to be you, Izuku said firmly. I am not going to punch my way through problems until my stomach falls out. I am going to optimize it. Optimize it? Science, Izuku said. Biomechanics. We aren't going to clean a beach by hauling trash blindly. We are going to calculate the muscle density required to hold the power. We are going to analyze the energy output. We are going to treat one for all not as a magic spell, but as a battery. Izuku looked at Nezu. Grandfather, I need access to the support lab's bioengineering wing. And I need a sample of All Might's hair for DNA sequencing. Nezu clapped. Approved. All Might looked back and forth between the mouse and the boy. He felt like he had just walked into a trap. Wait, All Might said. So you'll be my successor? But you want to turn it into a science project? I want to survive, Izuku said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I want to save people. But I want to be smart enough to save myself, too. He extended his hand to All Might. I'll take the quirk. But we do it my way. The Nezu way. All Might looked at the boy's hand. He saw the determination. It wasn't the blind faith of a fanboy. It was the calculated resolve of a strategist. Perhaps that was exactly what the world needed. All Might smiled. A genuine, small smile. Deal, All Might said. He shook the boy's hand. But you still have to clean the beach. It builds character. I'll use a lever system, Izuku countered. It's more efficient. Deal. 2 months later, the beach. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a garbage dump. Mountains of tires, scrap metal, and forgotten appliances blocked the horizon. This is inefficient, Izuku complained. He was wearing a tracksuit and monitoring a holographic display on his wrist. All Might, in his buff form, laughed, posing atop a pile of fridges. It is training, young Midoriya. You must build the vessel. I know that, Izuku muttered. But dragging a fridge by hand is bad for the lumbar spine. Just pull it, Izuku sighed. He walked over to the fridge, but he didn't grab the rope. He walked to a pile of scrap metal. He pulled out a long steel beam and a large concrete block. What are you doing? All Might asked. Archimedes, Izuku said. Give me a lever long enough, and I shall move the world. He set up the fulcrum. He wedged the beam under the fridge. He applied force to the long end. The fridge lifted easily. Izuku pushed it over, letting it slide down a ramp of plywood he had set up earlier. It landed perfectly in the recycling truck. Muscle engagement, 40%, Izuku read from his biomonitor. Cardiovascular strain minimal. Task completed, All Might stared. But, the point is the strain. I can add weights to my body while I operate the lever, Izuku offered. That way I build muscle and clear the trash faster. All Might rubbed his chin. You are a difficult student. I am an efficient student, Izuku corrected. From the promenade above, Nezu and Kaisala watched. He's going to drive Yagi insane, Kaisala noted, eating a bag of nuts. I know, Nezu giggled. Isn't it wonderful? 10 months later, the morning of the exam, the beach was clean. Not just clean, it was terraformed. Izuku hadn't just removed the trash. He had sorted it by material type, sold the scrap metal to fund his gadget budget, and used the profits to replant the dune grass to prevent erosion. Izuku stood on the clean sand. He was shirtless. He wasn't bulky like All Might. He was ripped, but lean. Like a swimmer. Like a predator. All Might stood before him, holding a single strand of golden hair. You have done it, All Might said, pride swelling in his chest. You have built the vessel. And you did it, remarkably fast. Optimization, Izuku said, breathing hard. Dietary macros adjusted daily. Sleep cycles synchronized. Recovery facilitated by cryotherapy. Right. Science. All Might held out the hair. Eat this. Izuku stared at it. Organic matter ingestion, Izuku analyzed. DNA transfer. Retroviral mechanism? It seems crude. Just eat it, kid, Izuku sighed. He took the hair. He swallowed it. He waited. I don't feel anything. Give it a few hours to digest, All Might said. Now go. Get dressed. The UA entrance exam begins in 2 hours. Izuku grabbed his shirt. He looked at All Might. Tashinori-sensei. Yes? Thank you. Izuku bowed deeply. Then, he turned and ran. He didn't jog. He sprinted, his movement fluid, vaulting over the railing of the promenade with the grace of a martin. UA High School gates. The massive glass structure of UA gleamed in the sunlight. Thousands of students were streaming in. Izuku walked through the crowd. He wore his middle school uniform, but he carried himself differently. He walked with silent steps. His eyes scanned the crowd, cataloging quirks, levitation, gigantification, emitter type, mutant type. Out of my way, Deku. Bakugo walked past him, shoving his shoulder. Izuku didn't stumble. He rotated his torso with the impact, dissipating the force. Good luck, Kaken, Izuku said. Bakugo stopped. He looked back. He saw the look in Izuku's eyes. It wasn't the look of a victim. It was the look of someone who knew something Bakugo didn't. TCH. Bakugo walked away, unsettled. Izuku took a deep breath. He stepped toward the gate. He tripped on his own shoelace. Variable, uneven pavement. Consequence, impact imminent. He braced for the fall, but he didn't hit the ground. He floated. Whoa! Are you okay? Izuku looked around. A girl with a round face and brown hair was touching his backpack. Her fingers had pads on them. I stopped you with my quirk, she said, smiling brightly. It's bad luck to fall before the exam. She released him. He landed on his feet. Quirk, 0 gravity. Touch activation. 5-point contact required. Thank you, Izuku said. That was efficient. I'm Uraraka Ochako. She beamed. You look nervous. I am, calibrating, Izuku said. Well, good luck. Let's do our best. She waved and ran off. Izuku watched her go. Kindness. A variable I didn't account for. He adjusted his backpack. Examination mode, engage, he whispered. He walked into the building. The written exam. The exam hall was silent. Izuku sat at his desk. He flipped the test paper over. Question 1. Calculate the blast radius of a thermal quirk given an ambient temperature of 25 C and a humidity of 60%. Izuku picked up his pencil. Too easy. He wrote the answer. Then, he wrote a footnote explaining why the question was flawed because it didn't account for wind direction. He finished the test in 30 minutes. The allotted time was 3 hours. He looked up. President Mike was staring at him from the podium. Izuku blinked. Slight twitch in his left eye. He's bored. Izuku put his head down and started designing a new costume upgrade on the back of the test sheet. The practical exam orientation. Welcome to the live show. President Mike screamed. Izuku sat in the auditorium. Beside him, Bakugo was vibrating with aggression. 3 types of robots. Mike explained. 1-pointer. 2-pointer. 3-pointer. And the 0-pointer, the gimmick. Avoid it. Izuku raised his hand. President Mike pointed. Yes. Examinee 2234. Question regarding the robots. Izuku projected his voice clearly. Are they autonomous, or remotely piloted? Autonomous AI. Mike answered. And are we permitted to bring support items? Only what you registered with. Understood. Izuku sat down. Why do you care if they're autonomous? Bakugo hissed. Because, Izuku whispered, tapping his temple. If they are AI, they have a logic pattern. And if they have a logic pattern, they can be tricked. Suddenly, a boy with glasses and blue hair stood up a few rows down. Sir, the printout says there are 4 robots. If this is a mistake, it is shameful for you, eh? And you. He pointed at Izuku. You've been muttering this whole time. It's distracting. If you're here to mess around, leave. Izuku looked at the boy. Ida Tenya? Family, ingenium. Quirk, engine. Personality, rigid. Adherence to rules, absolute. Izuku stood up again. He turned to face Ida. I was analyzing the enemy's potential weaknesses, Izuku said calmly. And regarding the 4th robot. President Mike already explained it is an obstacle to be avoided. A gimmick. It mimics a natural disaster. You don't fight a hurricane, you evacuate. It tests risk assessment. The auditorium went quiet. Ida blinked, stunned by the logic. I see. Ida bowed stiffly. I apologize for my outburst. Sit down. Bakugo yelled. Izuku sat. Okay. President Mike shouted. Everybody say hey. Silence. Tough crowd. Head to your battle centers. Battle Center B. Izuku stood before the massive gates of the mock city. He was wearing a green tracksuit and his utility belt. On his wrist was a device he called the Bishop, a grappling hook launcher with a built-in keypad. He felt a buzz under his skin. One for all. He hadn't tested it yet. Not at 100%. Nezu had warned him. Do not break yourself. Full cowling, Izuku whispered. Keep it at 5%. Green lightning crackled faintly around his legs. The gates began to open. There was no countdown. Izuku didn't wait. He launched himself forward before the siren even sounded. What are you waiting for? President Mick's voice boomed over the speakers. There are no countdowns in real battles. Go! 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 The other students were still processing. Izuku was already 50 meters inside the city. A 3-pointer drone, a massive tank-like robot, rolled around the corner. Target acquired. Izuku didn't punch it. He fired the Bishop. The grappling hook wrapped around the robot's visual sensor array. Izuku yanked hard, using his enhanced strength. He didn't pull the robot. He pulled himself to the robot. He landed on its head. Access panel, Izuku muttered. He found the maintenance hatch. He ripped it open with bare fingers. He saw the wires. Blue is power. Red is targeting. Yellow is gyroscope. He ripped the yellow wire. The robot groaned. It spun wildly, lost its balance, and crashed into a wall, deactivating. Izuku hopped off. One down, he said. Efficiency high. He looked at the city. It was a playground. And he was the ghost in the machine. Let's play. The waiting game. The human digestive system takes approximately 6 to 8 hours to process food through the stomach and small intestine. Izuku Midoriya sat at the kitchen table in the high-specs household, staring at a digital stopwatch. Time elapsed, 4 hours 32 minutes and 15 seconds. Stop staring at it, Kaisula said, walking by with a basket of laundry. A watched pot never boils, and a watched stomach never manifests a localized singularity of power. It's inefficient, Izuku muttered, tapping his pen against his notebook. The DNA transfer should be theoretically instantaneous once the retrovirus enters the bloodstream, unless the keratin in the hair is resisting breakdown. Should I have dissolved it in acid first? Please do not drink acid, Nezu called out from the living room, where he was currently beating a Grandmaster Chess AI on difficulty level God. All Might said it would take time. Patience is a variable, Izuku. Izuku groaned and let his head hit the table. He felt normal. That was the problem. He had swallowed the DNA of the world's greatest hero, the crystallization of 8 generations of power, and he felt exactly the same as he did yesterday. Maybe I'm incompatible, Izuku whispered. Maybe my quirklessness is genetic absolute zero. Maybe the vessel is sealed. Or maybe, Kaisula said, placing a cup of tea next to Izuku's head, you're just hungry. Eat your toast, Izuku sighed. He sat up. He reached for the toast. He felt a tickle in his nose. Dust? Pollen? Variable, sternutatory reflex. Ah. Izuku inhaled sharply. Asi-cho. It happened in a microsecond. As his diaphragm contracted to expel the air, his body instinctively tightened. The dormant energy, the spark that had been settling into his bone marrow, flared. Crack. It wasn't a loud explosion. It was the sharp, violent sound of ceramic shattering under extreme pressure. Izuku blinked. He was holding the handle of his tea mug. The rest of the mug had been pulverized into fine white dust. The tea splashed onto the table, dripping sadly onto the floor. The table itself, a sturdy oak slab, had a hairline fracture running down the center, originating from where his elbow had jerked. Silence filled the kitchen. Kaisula slowly lowered the laundry basket. Nezu peered around the corner, his ears perked up. Izuku looked at the ceramic handle in his hand. He looked at the cracked table. Oops, Izuku whispered. Nezu's face split into a terrifying grin. It begins. The lab, theory of constraints. Gym Gamma had been cleared for private administrative use. All Might stood in the center of the concrete floor, looking bulky and heroic. Nezu sat on a high observation platform with a megaphone. Kaisula was manning a bank of biometric sensors. Izuku stood in the middle, wearing a motion capture suit covered in tracking dots. All right, young Midoriya. All Might boomed. You have felt the spark. Now bring it out. Clench your buttocks. Yell from the depths of your heart. Smash. Izuku stared at him. Clench my, what? It's the feeling. All Might gestured vaguely with massive hands. Like an egg in a microwave. You have to hold the explosion inside, but let it out at the last second. Izuku turned to the observation deck. Grandfather, he's speaking in metaphors. I can't optimize a metaphor. Agreed, Nezu chirped over the PA system. Tashinori, your teaching methods are abstract to the point of negligence. Izuku, ignore the egg. But the egg is crucial. All Might protested. Izuku, Nezu continued, ignoring the number one hero. Let us apply physics. Describe the sensation you felt in the kitchen. Izuku closed his eyes. He replayed the data. It felt like a surge, he analyzed. Like high-voltage current suddenly introduced to a low-resistance circuit. It originated in the core, solar plexus region, and traveled outward. When I sneezed, the muscles contracted, closing the circuit. The energy discharged through the path of least resistance, my arm. And the result? Structural failure of the ceramic mug. Stress fracture in the table. And Izuku rubbed his right shoulder. Minor tearing in my own deltoid fibers. Pain level, 3 out of 10, precisely, Nezu said. One for all is not a muscle. It is an energy source. Think of it as a battery with infinite amperage. Your body is the wiring. If you push 100% of the amperage through a wire rated for 5%, what happens? The wire melts, Izuku said instantly. Or explodes. Exactly. Nezu cackled. All Might is a thick wire. He has spent 40 years reinforcing his insulation. You, my dear boy, are a filament. If you smash now, you will blow your fuse. All Might scratched his head. So, no smashing? No smashing, Izuku said, his eyes widening as the realization hit him. Optimization. I don't need to release the energy. I need to regulate it. Correct, Kaisula added from the monitors. Current output potential is off the charts. If you try to punch like him, you'll shatter your arm like a dry twig. You need a limiter. Izuku looked at his hands. The egg in the microwave. It explodes because the pressure builds up in one spot. Distribution, Izuku muttered. If I channel the energy into one limb, the arm, the pressure is too high. But if I distribute the load, if I let the current flow through the entire system simultaneously. Full circuit, Nezu encouraged. Don't flick the switch on and off. Dim the lights. Izuku took a deep breath. He widened his stance. He didn't clench his buttocks. He visualized the schematic of a complex machine. A network of pipes. Valve 1 open. Valve 2 open. Pressure regulation 5%. He pulled on the power. It rushed at him like a tidal wave. It wanted to break him. It wanted to explode. No, Izuku thought, forcing his mind to clamp down on the torrent. Not a wave. A stream. Constant. Steady. He gritted his teeth. Veins bulged on his forehead. Spread it out, he hissed. Legs. Torso. Arms. Head. Even the toes. Bzzzt. Green sparks jumped across his skin. Not a violent explosion, but a hum. A crackle of lightning wrapped around his body, illuminating the dark gym. Izuku opened his eyes. They were glowing a luminous, toxic green. He felt light. He felt like gravity had decided to loosen its grip on him. Output? Izuku choked out. 5%, Kaisula read from the screens. Stable. Heart rate elevated, but within safety parameters. I call it. Izuku grinned, the Nezu-style smile creeping onto his face. Full cowling. All Might stared, his jaw hanging slightly open. He figured that out in 10 minutes? It took me 3 months to stop blowing my shoes off. He has a better teacher, Nezu said smugly. Now Izuku. Movement test. Catch Kaisulu. Kaisulu abandoned the monitors. He leaped from the platform, landing on the gym floor on all fours. He didn't wait. He bolted, using his quirk tactical simulation to plot the most complex route through the obstacle course. Target acquired, Izuku said. He moved. He didn't run. He launched. The concrete beneath his feet didn't crack, but it dusted. He was a green blur. He hit the wall, ran 3 steps up it, kicked off, and grabbed a swinging bar. Too fast, his brain analyzed. Over-rotation. He spun out of control, crashing into a stack of mats. Oof. Control, Izuku! Nezu shouted. You have the engine of a Ferrari and the chassis of a go-kart. Learn to steer. Izuku pulled himself out of the mats. He was bruised. He was dizzy. He was ecstatic. Again, Izuku said, the lightning flaring back up. I need to recalibrate the friction coefficient. The workshop, the bishop, the power loader excavation and support studio, or the sandbox, as Izuku called it, smelled of oil, ozone, and burnt coffee. Izuku sat at a workbench, soldering iron in hand. He was wearing magnifying goggles. Your welds are sloppy, power loader, Maijima, grunted, leaning over his shoulder. They're functional, Izuku retorted, not looking up. I'm prioritizing tensile strength over aesthetics. The winch mechanism needs to handle dynamic loads of up to 300 kilograms if I'm using it for rapid transit. 300? Maijima raised an eyebrow under his helmet. You weigh 60, soaking wet. Planning to carry a piano? Planning to carry a variable, Izuku mumbled. Or redirect momentum. If I'm moving at high velocity and need to pivot, the G-force on the anchor point will spike. He held up the device. It was a gauntlet, sleek and dark green, made of carbon nanotube reinforced alloy. It housed a high-pressure pneumatic grapple launcher and a retractable cable. But unlike standard grapples, this one had a keypad integrated into the forearm. The Bishop, Majima read the label etched into the metal. Chess theme. Nezu's idea? My idea, Izuku said, strapping it onto his right arm. In chess, the bishop moves diagonally. It cuts through the board. It attacks from unexpected angles. It's not the strongest piece, but in an open game, it's lethal. And the keypad? Interface, Izuku tapped the keys. It connects to my headset and external networks. I can hack a door lock while hanging from the ceiling. You're building a burglar kit, Majima sighed. I'm building an access tool. Suddenly, the door to the workshop exploded open. Did someone say explosions? A girl with pink dreadlocks and terrifying steampunk goggles zoomed in on a hoverchair. Hatsum, Majima groaned. Not now. Mei Hatsum ignored him. She zoomed right up to Izuku, her face inches from his. She sniffed the gauntlet. Ooh. Pneumatics. Is that a titanium weave? Boring. Needs more combustion. Have you considered adding a rocket thruster to the elbow for maximum punching velocity? Izuku blinked. He analyzed her instantly. Mei Hatsum. First-year support applicant. Obsessive. High intelligence. Zero safety protocols. Rocket thrusters would add uncontrolled instability, Izuku said. And the heat would degrade the cable integrity. Mei paused. She looked at him. You speak baby? She whispered, her eyes sparkling. I speak physics, Izuku corrected. I like him. Mei declared, spinning around. Power loader, can I keep him? I want to test my new baby 44, the automatic baby eater on him. No, Majima and Izuku said in unison. Izuku turned back to his gauntlet. He flexed his fingers. The cable whirred softly, a sound like a coiled snake. I need boots, Izuku said. Impact dampening soles. If I'm using full cowling, my landings are going to be rough on the cartilage. I have just the thing. Mei screamed, diving into a pile of scrap. Iron soles. With springs. And landmines. No landmines. Fine. Just springs. Izuku looked at Majima. Is she always like this? You get used to it, Majima said wearily. Eventually, the tinnitus drowns her out. Izuku smiled. He felt at home here. The wires, the metal, the logic of machines. It made sense. Unlike people, machines didn't lie. Machines didn't look down on you. Machines just worked, or they didn't. And Izuku was going to work. The return, Aldera Junior High. The final week of middle school was a liminal space. The exams were over. The future was waiting. The air was thick with the anxiety of teenagers about to be scattered to the winds. Izuku walked into the classroom. He had been absent for independent study, Nezu's code for training, for the last month. The room went quiet when he entered. He looked different. It wasn't just the muscle, though the uniform was definitely tighter around the shoulders. It was the way he walked. He didn't shuffle. He didn't hug the wall. He walked down the center of the aisle, his steps silent, his head up. He sat at his desk. He pulled out a book on advanced game theory. Deku. The voice was low, vibrating with suppressed anger. Izuku didn't flinch. He slowly marked his page and looked up. Bakugo stood over him. But Bakugo looked tired. There were bags under his eyes. The sludge villain incident had shaken him, though he would never admit it. And the fact that Deku, the pebble, had been the one to create the opening? It was eating him alive. You've been gone, Bakugo said. Studying, Izuku replied. Don't lie to me. Bakugo slammed a hand on the desk. I saw you. At the beach. With All Might. The class gasped. Whispers erupted. All Might? Midoriya? No way. Izuku's expression didn't change. He was inspecting the environmental cleanup. I was a volunteer. You're full of crap. Bakugo yelled. You think because you cleaned up some trash and threw a backpack at a villain, you're better than me? No, Izuku said calmly. Then withdraw from UA. Bakugo's palms crackled. Don't make me kill you in the exam, Deku. You're quirkless. You're nothing. You're just a bug I'm gonna crush. Izuku stood up. He was still shorter than Bakugo. But in that moment, he felt 10 feet tall. Kaken, Izuku said. His voice was soft, but it carried across the silent room. You are obsessed with victory. You define your worth by who is beneath you. Shut up, but hierarchy is a construct, Izuku continued, stepping closer. The smell of nitroglycerin was sharp, but Izuku didn't recoil. You think you're the apex predator because you have big teeth and loud explosions. But in nature, the most dangerous animal isn't the lion. Izuku leaned in. His green eyes seemed to glow faintly, a trick of the light, or something else. It's the virus, Izuku whispered. The thing you can't see until it's already dismantled your system from the inside. Bakugo took a step back. He didn't mean to. His body reacted before his brain could stop it. The look in Izuku's eyes, it wasn't Deku. It was the eyes of that thing in the alley. The Martin. I'm not looking down on you, Kaken, Izuku said, picking up his bag. I'm not even looking at you. I'm looking past you. Toward the target. Izuku walked past Bakugo. He walked out of the classroom. Bakugo stood there, trembling. Not with fear. He told himself it wasn't fear, but with a rage that felt cold, not hot. Damn you, Bakugo whispered. Damn you, Deku. The night before, the roof of the Yui residential block offered a clear view of the city. Izuku sat on the edge, legs dangling. He was wearing his green suit, not a hero costume yet, just a reinforced tactical bodysuit that Kaisulu had procured. Nezu sat beside him, enjoying a cup of chamomile tea. You dissected your friend quite thoroughly today, Nezu commented. He's not my friend, Izuku said, looking at the city lights. He's a constant. He's a reminder of what the world used to be for me. And what is the world now? Izuku held up his hand. He channeled one for all at 1%. Green sparks danced between his fingers. A puzzle, Izuku said. A system to be solved. And if the puzzle fights back, then I change the rules. Nezu sipped his tea. You are ready, Izuku. Not just physically. Your mind has adapted. You have learned to suppress the prey instinct. I still feel scared, Izuku admitted. I'm terrified I'll fail all might. That I'll break my bones. That I'll freeze. Fear is data, Nezu said. It tells you where the danger is. Use it. Kaisula popped out of the shadows behind them. Pack it up, philosophers, Kaisula grunted. 5 o'clock wake-up call. Carb loading starts at 6 o'clock. If you're late, I eat your breakfast, Izuku laughed. It was a genuine sound. Okay, Dad. The entrance exam, Phase 0. The morning of the exam was bright and cold. Izuku stood at the gates of UA. The crowd was massive. He saw familiar faces. Bakugo, scowling at a tree. The girl with the gravity quirk, looking nervous. The boy with glasses, doing robotic chopping motions. Izuku checked his equipment. The bishop, loaded. Iron saws, calibrated. Smoke pellets, pocket 3. Lockpicks, pocket 5, just in case. He tapped his earpiece. Comms check, he whispered. Read you loud and clear, Oracle. Kaisula's voice came through. Remember, no outside assistance during the exam. I'm just here to record the data for the blooper reel. Thanks for the confidence. Break a leg. Preferably a robot's. Izuku took a deep breath. He channeled the feeling of full cowling. The hum under his skin. He walked through the gates. Written exam. It was a massacre. Not of students, but of the test itself. Izuku breezed through the questions. English, easy. Present mixed grammar was atrocious, but the test was standard. Math, trivial. Nezu had him calculating orbital decay trajectories last week. History, memorized. He finished in 45 minutes. He spent the remaining time analyzing the structural integrity of the ceiling tiles. Practical exam orientation. Present Mike screamed. Bakugo yelled. Ida complained. Izuku sat in silence, visualizing the city map shown on the screen. Urban environment. High density. Verticality is key. The robots are ground-based. The streets are kill zones. The rooftops are safe havens. When the gates of Battle Center be opened, Izuku didn't need a countdown. Go! He was already gone. Battle Center B, the variable. The mock city was vast. Concrete buildings, paved streets, hidden alleys. Izuku moved. He didn't run down the main street like the other examinees. That was a bottleneck. He fired the bishop. The grapple caught the edge of a third-story balcony. Zip. He ascended, leaving the crowd behind. From the rooftops, the battlefield looked different. It looked like a board. Down below, a one-pointer, a wheeled drone, was menacing a student. Target 1, Izuku whispered. He leaped from the roof. Full cowling, 5%. He fell with terminal velocity. As he neared the robot, he didn't punch. He extended his legs, activating the springs in his iron saws. Impact. He landed on the robot's sensor array with both feet. The metal crunched. The force of his fall, multiplied by the leg strength of OFA, drove the robot's head into its chassis. He rebounded off the wreckage, flipping in the air to land on a lamppost. 6 points, he calculated. Inefficient. I need clusters. He scanned the area. Down the street, a group of 2-pointers, scorpion-like bots, and 3-pointers, massive tanks, were converging on a plaza. Students were scattering. A cluster, Izuku grinned. Perfect. He tapped his earpiece, though no one could answer. Deploying smoke. He reached into pocket 3. He threw 3 pellets into the center of the robot formation. Poof! Thick gray smoke filled the plaza. The robot's visual sensors went white. They started firing blindly, their friendly fire protocols confused by the obstruction. Izuku dove into the smoke. To the robots, he was invisible. To Izuku, who had memorized the layout and could hear the whir of their servos, they were sitting ducks. He moved like a phantom, grappled the tank tread. Pull! The tank spun, its cannon blasting a 2-pointer, kicked the scorpion's tail joint. It collapsed, stinging itself, ripped the battery pack off the 3-pointer. It powered down. When the smoke cleared, Izuku stood amidst a pile of scrap metal. 7 robots lay destroyed. 25 points, he noted. Other students stopped running to stare. Who is that guy? He doesn't have an attack quirk. He's just fast. Is he a ninja? Izuku ignored them. He checked his watch. 5 minutes remaining. I need 60 points to guarantee a scholarship. He fired the bishop again, swinging away toward the industrial district. The observation room. In the dark room lined with screens, the teachers of UA watched. Impressive mobility, ectoplasm noted. He's using the verticality better than anyone. His situational awareness is terrifying, Snipe added. He blinded the enemies and used their confusion to induce friendly fire. That's not hero tactics. That's Spec Ops stuff. He moves like Nezu, Midnight whispered, a shiver running down her spine. All Might sat in the corner beaming. That's my boy. Use the brain. Nezu sat in his big chair sipping tea. He currently has 45 villain points. Respectable. But now, Nezu pressed a large red button. Let's see how he handles the stress test. The 0-pointer. The ground shook. Izuku was perched on a billboard, scanning for targets. He felt the vibration before he heard it. Seismic activity? No. Rhythmic impact. He looked toward the center of the city. A massive hand, the size of a bus, smashed through a skyscraper. The 0-pointer. It was colossal. A moving mountain of green metal. Debris rained down. Dust choked the air. The students on the ground screamed. It's huge! Run! That's the gimmick! Get away! Izuku watched them flee. Logic dictates evacuation, Izuku thought. 0 points. High risk. No reward. Strategic withdrawal is the optimal move. He turned to leave. Ouch! The voice was faint. Izuku stopped. His ears swiveled, a habit picked up from Kaisalu. He looked down. Trapped under a pile of rubble near the robot's path was the girl. Uraraka. The one who had saved him from falling. She was struggling. Her leg was pinned. The 0-pointer was looming over her, its treads grinding the pavement to dust. Distance, 40 meters. Robot speed, 5 meters per second. Time to impact, 8 seconds. Analysis. Option A, run. Survival probability 100%. Girl's survival probability 0%. Option B, intervene. Izuku didn't think about the points. He didn't think about Nezu's lectures on efficiency. He thought about the debt. She saved me from tripping. Balance must be restored. Izuku moved. He didn't swing away. He dove toward the monster. Full cowling. 8%. He felt the strain on his bones. It hurt. But he needed the speed. He hit the ground, sliding under the debris. He grabbed the slab of concrete pinning Uraraka. Leverage, he grunted. He jammed his foot against the stable rock and pulled. The concrete shifted. Get up! Izuku yelled. Ah, my leg. Uraraka gasped. The shadow of the robot fell over them. The massive metal foot was descending. No time to run, Izuku realized. He looked up at the robot. All Might would punch it. All Might would smash it into the sky. Izuku scanned it. Target, 0-pointer. Mass, approximate 1,000 tons. Armor, heavy. Weakness, his eyes zoomed in. The neck joint. The hydraulic pistons are exposed to allow head rotation. If I disrupt the pressure in the primary piston, the head's weight will cause a catastrophic mechanical failure. He looked at Uraraka. Stay down. Izuku crouched. One for all. Bishop variation. He aimed his gauntlet at the piston, high above them. He fired. The grapple latched on. The winch motor screamed as it retracted, pulling Izuku into the air at breakneck speed. He flew toward the robot's face. They said not to add rockets, Izuku muttered, clenching his free fist. But I am the rocket. He channeled power into his right arm. Not 5%. Not 8%. He needed to break the piston. 100%. Momentary discharge. He swung around the cable, using the momentum to turn himself into a wrecking ball. He slammed his fist into the hydraulic piston. Detroit. Logic. Smash. Crack. The sound was like a gunshot. The piston shattered. Fluid sprayed everywhere. The robot's head, suddenly unsupported, lurched forward. The massive weight sheared the remaining bolts. With a groan of tearing metal, the robot's head fell off. It crashed to the ground 10 meters away from Uraraka, missing her, but creating a barrier between her and the body. The body of the robot, blind and headless, ground to a halt. Izuku hung in the air, dangling by his cable. His right arm was purple. Broken. Calculation error, Izuku gasped, swinging in the wind. Recoil exceeded parameters. He released the grapple. He fell. He didn't have the legs to land. Slap. He stopped in midair. Uraraka, lying on the ground, had reached out and slapped a piece of debris that touched him. Release, she wheezed. Izuku dropped the last few feet, landing in a heap. The sirens sounded. Time's up. Izuku lay on his back, staring at the sky. His arm was throbbing with a pain that made his vision white. But he was alive. The girl was alive. Inefficient, Izuku whispered, passing out. But acceptable.